I never imagined that the final goodbye to my sister would also be the moment my life veered in a different direction. Dark, cold, and stripped of anything to hold on to. My sister Amanda's funeral was held at a small church on the outskirts of Charleston. That March was unusually cold. The wind wasn't strong enough to knock petals from the trees, but it was sharp enough to make your skin sting, like it was being torn apart by grief that had no name. Amanda passed after 9 months of battling ovarian cancer. I had been by her side through every round of chemo, every time she vomited from exhaustion. Every night she cried in pain but still managed to sing her baby to sleep. And him? The man I once believed was my forever. Only helped out when it was convenient, or so I thought. Until he whispered something in my ear right beside her grave. Amid the sobs and final farewells, as the priest read the closing lines of prayer, my husband wrapped his arm around my shoulder and pulled me close. From the outside, anyone would think we were grieving together. But only I heard what he said. She was the true love of my life, Rose. And she gave me a child. Something you never could. My whole body went numb. The blood in my veins turned to ice, not from the weather, but from those words. Each one a dagger straight to my heart. I didn't turn around. I didn't scream. I didn't push him away. I just stood there, frozen, watching the casket lower into the earth, burying what was left of my soul. Lucas didn't know that 3 months earlier, I had seen his messages with Amanda. One night, while he was in the shower, a preview flashed on his phone screen. I wish I could fall asleep in your arms tonight instead of going home. Sender, Amanda. I wanted to believe I'd misread it, that Amanda was just vulnerable and Lucas was simply a comfort, but then more messages appeared, raw and undeniable. Lucas had loved my sister. And now, just as I dropped the first handful of soil to say goodbye to her, he planted another knife in my ear. Deep enough not to kill, but cruel enough to make breathing impossible. I looked down at Gabriel, the 19-month-old boy being held behind me. He was wailing, his tiny hands reaching wildly for his mother's scent. I had believed he was Daniel's son, Amanda's boyfriend who had been caring for her through the final months. But now I knew, maybe he wasn't. Lucas gently squeezed my waist as if comforting his wife during a time of sorrow. He had no idea I knew everything. I tilted my head slightly, forcing a faint smile onto my lips, the smile of a woman who had reached rock bottom but somehow managed to grab hold of the last rope. That afternoon, after the funeral, I stood in Amanda's kitchen, the same kitchen I used to wipe down cabinet by cabinet when she was too exhausted from chemo. The cracks in the granite were still there. The faded cereal stains Gabriel had spilled were still untouched. But there was no soft laughter as I brewed tea, no sound of Gabriel crawling across the hardwood floor, saying "Mama" like a lullaby left unfinished. Lucas walked in, placing a plastic container of leftover sandwiches on the counter. He exhaled heavily, pretending to be worn out. "Are you going home tomorrow?" he asked, his voice light, as if he hadn't whispered betrayal into my ear just hours earlier. "There's still a lot to sort through. Gabriel needs someone. Daniel's probably exhausted too." Lucas didn't say anything else. He opened the fridge, grabbed a soda, and leaned against the counter. He felt like a stranger wearing my husband's skin. The familiar face I once clung to after long hospital shifts now looked like a perfectly crafted mask. I remembered the nights Amanda vomited violently after chemo. I'd sit behind her, rubbing her back with trembling hands, helpless. Lucas would offer to watch Gabriel. "So you can rest a bit," he said. I had been touched. Now it all played back like a tightly written script. Every time he brought diapers, made formula, strolled with Amanda and the baby in the backyard, I thought I had a husband who loved my sister like family. Turns out, I'd been watching a man play the role of silent father. Gabrielle, a 1.5 years old, was now sleeping peacefully in the living room, clutching the stuffed tiger Lucas had bought from Target last week. "I think he knows," Lucas had said when Gabrielle reached for him. "He can feel who his dad is." I nearly threw up when I heard that. Daniel, Amanda's official boyfriend, truly believed Gabriel was his son. He wasn't handsome like Lucas, didn't have a high-paying job or a fancy house, But Daniel had something Lucas never would. Unconditional love. He had helped me take Amanda to her treatments, carried Gabriel through sleepless nights, learned fatherhood with his whole heart, and now I faced a freezing possibility. Daniel was raising the child of the man who shattered both our families. That night, after everyone had left Amanda's house, I wandered through each room like a ghost. Her scent was still everywhere. Lavender shampoo, warm oatmeal, the comforting presence of the woman I once believed was my anchor in life. And then, as if something pulled me, I stepped into the master bedroom. The bedding was neatly folded. A framed photo of Amanda holding Gabriel sat carefully on the dresser. But in the second drawer, beneath hospital papers, I found a small wooden box. Inside were letters. No envelopes, no recipient names, just Amanda's handwriting. Like diary entries to someone she could never name out loud. Lucas, if I don't make it, I just hope you won't leave Gabriel. You said I was the light at the end of the tunnel, but why do you still hold her when you go home? I had to sit on the floor to keep from collapsing. The shaky handwriting confirmed what I'd known, but kept lying to myself about every night. Amanda and Lucas had shared something unforgivable. I heard Gabriel softly call in his sleep, "Mama." The pain wasn't a stab anymore. It was 1,000 needles, slowly sinking in. Lucas had slept with my sister. He let me care for the woman he loved while playing the devoted husband. He let me believe I was infertile, while his child slept peacefully in my dead sister's home. I closed the box and placed it gently back in the drawer. From that moment on, I knew I could no longer stand on the sidelines. I would uncover the truth, all of it, about Gabriel and everything buried beneath the moral facade Lucas had carefully built. I used to think Amanda was the one I needed to protect, but not anymore. Now, I had to protect myself. And the child, the one who deserved to grow up surrounded by truth. I woke up Monday morning with a single purpose in mind: to know the truth. There was no more room for guessing, no more space for a vague hope that maybe it had all been a misunderstanding. Amanda was gone. But Gabriel, the poor boy, sleeping in the next room, deserved to know who he really was. I couldn't let someone like Lucas deceive another child. When Lucas left Amanda's house to return to the city for some client files, I started moving. I didn't say anything to Daniel. He still believed I was just helping him sort out Amanda's financial matters, and I needed everything to feel natural. I went to the bathroom where Amanda used to keep Gabriel's things and quietly took his tiny toothbrush. A few soft bristles and a smear of strawberry toothpaste were still visible. Then I went to Lucas's travel kit, his usual shaving bag for business trips. In the bottom drawer, I found an old razor blade he'd left behind. I carefully sealed both samples in plastic bags, labeled them with the date and time like a seasoned nurse. I'd worked in the ER for nearly 8 years. Collecting samples wasn't new to me, but this time, my hands trembled. 3 days later, I drove to a neighboring town, to a private clinic that specialized in paternity testing. I used a fake name and paid in cash. The receptionist eyed me suspiciously, but didn't ask many questions. I simply said, "I need to know if my husband is really the father of this child." The answer arrived exactly 1 week later. I opened the envelope in my car, parked behind a small strip mall on the edge of town. I read it 3 times before I fully grasped the meaning of each line. The scientific language was clinical, but the conclusion was crystal clear. And chilling. Lucas was not Gabriel's biological father. I slumped back in the driver's seat. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. Inside me, everything collapsed and rebuilt itself at once. Lucas had been so certain, confident enough to whisper his delusion beside my sister's grave. Turns out, he had been living in a fantasy too. If Lucas wasn't the father, then who? The only person who had consistently been by Amanda's side throughout her pregnancy was Daniel. I decided I needed to speak with him. But I couldn't just drop it on him. Not on a man who had just lost the woman he loved and was raising a child he thought was adopted. That evening, I invited Daniel over for dinner. We sat at the small table by the window, the one where Amanda used to sit and paint when she was still well. Gabriel lay in his bassinet nearby, occasionally reaching for the dangling toy above him. I need to talk to you seriously, I began, placing the envelope on the table. Daniel stopped mid-bite. His face turned pale. Did I do something wrong? He asked, unsure. I shook my head. I just want you to be honest with me before I open this. He glanced at the envelope, then at me. What is that? A DNA test. Between Lucas and Gabrielle. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled sharply. And? I want to hear the story from you first. A heavy silence settled between us. Finally, he set down his chopsticks. Amanda and I, we were close for a while before she officially called me her boyfriend. I stayed quiet. At first it was just helping out. She was tired, scared. Then one night, we got close. But afterward, she pulled away. Said everything was too complicated, that the baby might not be mine, that I should keep my distance. I placed my hand on the envelope. The results say Lucas is not Gabriel's father. He looked down, lips pressed into a thin line as if the truth had knocked the air out of him. His eyes flickered like someone teetering on the edge between hope and dread. Are you sure? He whispered. I read the report myself. Lucas is not the biological father, I said, more calmly than I felt. And I think if anyone deserves the truth, it's you. Daniel clenched his hands, resting them on the table as if to stop himself from shaking. Amanda once said, maybe the baby wasn't mine. But she never said it outright. She was afraid. Afraid people would think she was using me. I looked into his eyes. They held nothing but quiet pain, genuine love, and grief. Do you want to be sure? I asked. I can help you get tested. Discreetly? If he's my son, I need to know. 10 days later, I got the results back from the clinic. I opened the envelope in the same spot, in my car behind the strip mall. And this time, my hands were steady. The conclusion was brief and undeniable. Daniel Morrison is the biological father of Gabriel Reed. I stared at the bolded sentence as if seeing a piece of Amanda's soul. My sister, who was gone but had left behind secrets far bigger than I'd imagined. I met Daniel at a quiet cafe near the lake where he often took Gabriel for walks. When I handed him the envelope, he opened it with trembling hands. A minute later, Daniel was in tears. He's my son, he whispered. Words felt unnecessary. I just rested my hand on his shoulder. No words felt appropriate in that moment. It was the kind of happiness that came wrapped in loss. A gift and a wound. What do you think I should do? He asked. My eyes lingered on him for a moment, then drifted toward the lake, where the water barely moved. Gabriel's 2nd birthday is coming up. We'll throw a party. And I'll tell the truth. Daniel turned to me, eyes wide. In front of everyone? Lucas needs to be forced to face reality. And Gabriel, he deserves to grow up in honesty. Daniel hesitated. I don't want Gabriel to get hurt. Then all the more reason for you to stand beside him as his real father. I spent the entire week preparing for the birthday party. A small, intimate gathering, but enough to include everyone who had ever been a part of Gabriel's life. Family, Amanda's friends, close neighbors, even the parish's senior pastor, and yes, Lucas. Lucas suspected nothing. On the contrary, he seemed enthusiastic that I had taken the initiative to organize the event. He thought I was healing after the funeral, slowly accepting the loss. He had no idea that every invitation I sent carried a hidden message, come witness the truth. The party was held in Amanda's backyard. Gentle sunlight streamed through the trees, balloons floated in the breeze, and a train-shaped birthday cake sat in the center of a long table draped in white cloth. Gabriel wore a little navy mule suit, his hair neatly combed, eyes lighting up whenever someone called his name. Lucas, as always, played the role of the perfect man, carrying Gabriel around to greet guests, smiling, even shedding a few tears during the pastor's blessing. I stood in a corner, watching him perform, counting each heartbeat in my chest. At exactly 3 p.m., as everyone gathered around the cake, I stepped forward and gently tapped a glass. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Gabriel, I began. Today is not just a child's birthday, it's also the day a truth is revealed. Guests began exchanging glances. Lucas frowned. Daniel stood still, holding Gabriel in his arms. I walked over to the table and picked up a stack of white envelopes. Each one had the name of a guest written on it. I handed them out, one by one. Inside each envelope is a story I believe every one of you has the right to know. The truth about Gabriel, about love, about betrayal. Lucas stepped forward, whispering urgently, "Rose, what are you doing?" Bringing the truth into the light. I turned back to the crowd. Gabriel is Amanda's son, but the man many of you assume to be his father is not. I turned toward Daniel, locking eyes with him. Please meet the biological father of Gabrielle, Daniel Morrison, the man who cared for Amanda until her final days, the man who loved this child with his whole heart, even when he didn't know they shared blood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people covered their mouths. The pastor lowered his glasses. Lucas didn't move. His face drained of color, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. I turned to him, my voice low and firm. You whispered at my sister's grave that she gave you a child, but you were wrong, Lucas. What you had was a lie. This is fake. You're making this up. You're spiraling from grief, and now you're dragging everyone into your twisted fantasy. Lucas shouted, his voice hoarse from fear and rage. He snatched an envelope from a guest's hand and ripped the document inside, trembling. Who did this for you? Who's behind this? He yelled, pointing at Daniel, who held Gabriel close, protectively, as if he were the threat. Daniel simply shook his head. I didn't need anyone, Lucas. I have the truth. People around us slowly backed away, putting distance between themselves and Lucas, like avoiding a bomb about to go off. Their eyes were no longer curious, they were disgusted. The pastor, who had performed our wedding 7 years earlier, stood and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. He gave a quiet nod. I understood. We had won. At least the first battle. But I knew this wouldn't be Lucas's downfall. Yet. He was the kind of man who would claw his way back, and I couldn't allow it. That evening, after everyone had left, I stood alone in Amanda's backyard, staring at the balloons still clinging to the fence and the pile of unopened gifts. Lucas had stormed off after the confrontation. Without a word, Daniel approached, holding a mug of hot tea. What will you do next? He asked. I stared at Amanda's darkened house. Once, Lucas's second home. His false kingdom. It's not over. I need proof. The kind that can't be denied. Daniel was quiet for a moment. You think he's hiding more? He didn't just betray me and my sister, he took advantage of Amanda's illness. Daniel's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He managed part of Amanda's finances when she was too weak to handle paperwork. Legally, I was her designated guardian, but Lucas, I trusted him so much I let him manage a few payments. Looking back, too much of it doesn't add up. Daniel gripped his mug. So, what's your plan? I didn't answer right away. I had been thinking about one name for a long time. Someone Lucas betrayed even before me, but who never had the courage to speak up. David Clark. 2 weeks later, I tracked him down at a construction site on the outskirts of Columbia. Rumor had it David was working as a site supervisor. He'd once been Lucas's partner in a real estate project 3 years ago. Lucas had taken full credit. David had invested time and money. When the project failed, Lucas walked away clean. David lost his house, his marriage, and his reputation. I found him in a temporary office container, sipping coffee in a faded safety vest. Mr. Clark? I called. He looked up, eyes wary. Who are you? Rose Walsh, soon-to-be ex-wife of Lucas Jensen. The name made him sigh. He set down his mug. What do you want? I want to take him down, and I think we can do it together. We talked for nearly an hour. At first, David didn't believe me, probably because he'd been burned by Lucas too many times. But when I showed him Amanda's old bank records and pointed to the secondary account Lucas had accessed, his eyes changed. He did the same thing to me, pulled money from project payments and used legal tricks to erase the trail. By the time I realized, it was too late. I'm not asking you for revenge. I just want your help gathering evidence. David gave a bitter laugh. I still have the emails, the contracts, even the texts where he threatened to sue if I ever spoke up. I have full access to Amanda's financial records. I can trace the withdrawals he made from her treatment fund transferred into an investment wallet under another name. Two people, once manipulated by the same man, now shared one goal. In the weeks that followed, David and I secretly collected proof. I tracked the suspicious transactions Lucas made during Amanda's treatment. David provided a detailed history of illegal financial activity tied to their failed project, including screenshots of emails and testimony from a former accountant who once worked under Lucas. The final piece came from somewhere I never expected: Amanda's family attorney, Mr. Raymond Beckett. While revisiting the inheritance documents, I discovered a copy of a contract Lucas had pressured Amanda into signing while she was hospitalized. It granted him full temporary asset management support. An innocuous-sounding phrase, but enough to conceal the diversion of funds from her insurance account. Just like how Lucas once destroyed David with a single planted article, I knew I had to use his own weapon against him. I booked the cabin, same spot you loved, near the waterfall. I think we should give it another try, start fresh. Lucas smiled as he handed me the reservation confirmation. I pretended to be touched, my hand trembling slightly as I took the paper. The trip date matched our wedding anniversary. 7 years ago, in that same place, I had believed I was the happiest woman alive. This time, I brought more than clothes. In my suitcase was a hard drive containing all the documents David Clark and I had gathered over the past 3 months, along with a detailed report ready to send to the authorities. We left on Friday. Lucas had no idea I'd changed. In his eyes, I was still the fragile wife, softened by his belated affection. The lakeside cabin was peaceful, cozy. Lucas opened wine, prepared a simple dinner, and played the song from our wedding. I sipped the wine, smiled at the right moments, hugged him long enough for him to believe everything had returned to normal. That night, while Lucas slept beside me, I sat in the living room staring at the starlit sky and checked my email one last time. The message from the lead investigator had arrived. The arrest warrant will be executed Sunday afternoon as you return. Please be prepared. We left the cabin at 1 p.m. Lucas played music in the car while I sat beside him, my hand resting calmly on my lap. He rambled on about renovating the kitchen, planning a fall trip, and opening a savings account for Gabriel. Plans that would never come true. As the car turned onto the main street, I spotted the police cruisers already waiting near the house. Lucas started swearing when he saw 3 officers approaching. One of them was Detective Garner, the lead investigator on the case. "Mr. Lucas Jensen?" Lucas frowned. "That's me. What's going on?" "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of financial fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and falsifying bank records." "What? What the hell is this, Rose?" I stepped back, hand still resting on my purse strap, eyes steady on his panicked face. "Call a lawyer," I said quietly. "Because I'm not." The calls didn't stop. Neither did the texts or emails. But I let them all go unanswered. Every missed call was a silent rejection. Every deleted message, a quiet end. Lucas's attorney contacted me asking me to co-sign his bail. "All you need to do is sign the house as collateral," he said, professionally cold. I smiled. "The house is in my name, and I'm not bailing out a man who lied to his wife and his dying sister-in-law." Lucas was held in the Charleston County Jail awaiting trial. 3 months later, the trial concluded. With the evidence David and I provided, the jury found him guilty on all counts. Lucas was sentenced to 7 years in prison without parole and ordered to pay restitution to Amanda's family and to David. I didn't cry when the verdict was read. Not because I was heartless, but because I had already cried enough. I moved into Amanda's house permanently. The old house became something new, peaceful, organized, free of deception. I transformed her sewing room into a small studio where I started painting again, for the first time in nearly a decade since I abandoned my dream of art. In the backyard, I planted sunflowers, lavender, and white daisies. Gabriel loved watering them. Every time he laughed, I saw a part of Amanda still alive in those hazel eyes. Daniel and Gabrielle visited every weekend. We didn't talk about the future. We didn't rush to label, shared dinners. We were simply there. For Gabrielle. For what had risen from the wreckage. Eventually, I began volunteering at a center for women who had experienced financial and emotional abuse. I told them my story about betrayal, control, and how easy it was to be made to believe your worth depended on submission. I told it so they'd know. No one deserves to live in someone else's shadow. Gabriel is now 4 years old. He has dark brown hair and warm hazel eyes, just like Amanda. Every time he smiles, my throat tightens, because that light still lives on, even though Amanda is no longer here. Gabriel is growing up surrounded by love, not lies. Daniel is the kind of father every child hopes for. Patient, gentle, never raises his voice, always ready to spend hours explaining why the moon changes shapes, or why sunflowers follow the sun. I've kept nothing from Gabriel. We've chosen to tell him the truth, bit by bit, just enough for him to understand in his own way. When he asked about his real mom, I led him to the backyard, to the flowers Amanda once adored, and told him. Mama Amanda was very brave. She gave birth to you while she was very sick, but she still sang you lullabies every night. She loved you right up to her very last breath. Gabriel sat still, placing his tiny hand on a lavender stem. Then, why isn't Mama here anymore? I didn't dodge the question. Because her body was too weak, but her heart is still here inside you. You are the most beautiful part she left for the world. He stayed quiet for a long time, then tilted his head. So, is Daddy Daniel my real daddy? He was bent over the flower bed, fingers brushing soil, but his trembling shoulders said more than words ever could. Yes, I said. He loved your mommy with all his heart. And now he loves you just as deeply. Gabriel didn't ask anything else. He ran to Daniel and hugged his leg, pressing his cheek against it as he whispered, I love you, Daddy. I continued working at the Women's Support Center, where I met dozens of women carrying cracks like mine, both in spirit and in reality. A husband who controlled the bank account, a partner who vanished with all their savings, a wife pressured into signing papers she didn't understand. I didn't share my full story, but I told just enough for them to see they weren't alone, and that living in truth, no matter how painful, is still easier to breathe in than behind a beautiful mask someone else built. I hung my first painting in years, a quiet corner of an autumn garden, where Gabrielle bent down to gather fallen leaves, surrounded by golden flowers and soft slanting sunlight. I called it, What Remains Alive. Sometimes at night, I still dream of Amanda. She stands by the window, her hand resting on her belly, smiling gently. No more exhaustion, no more hidden glances. She's at peace. Maybe because she knows Gabrielle is okay. Lucas has been silent for over a year. His lawyer sent a few letters proposing to revisit the divorce terms, the asset division, the idea of co-parenting for Gabriel. I never responded. Gabriel doesn't need Lucas. He's not missing anything. Someone once asked me, don't you regret it? If you had left it alone, Gabriel would have grown up happy, never knowing. I simply shook my head. If I had left it alone, Gabriel would have grown up in the dark. He would have called the wrong man Dad. He would have believed love was sweet deception wrapped in roses and birthday cakes. And by the time he learned the truth, the fall would be too deep to recover from. The truth is the only thing that can protect a child's future. I have no regrets. On Gabriel's 5th birthday, Daniel planned a small picnic at the park near our home. Gabriel got a green bicycle with a red ribbon, chocolate cupcakes, and a little album I made, filled with photos of Amanda holding him, Daniel teaching him to ride, and the painting What Remains Alive. You know, I said as he climbed onto the bike, you carry all the best parts of your mom and dad. Gabriel turned and nodded seriously. That's why I'll be kind to everyone, like Mama Amanda did. I smiled as tears slipped down my cheeks, no need to wipe them away. Some dreams don't need to be spoken aloud. They bloom anyway, every day, in the garden behind the house. My story didn't begin with betrayal, but with silence, the kind that corrodes every ounce of trust you once had. But out of that collapse, I learned this. The truth, no matter how brutal, is the only foundation strong enough for a healthy future. Gabriel is growing up not in the shadow of lies, but in the light of real love. I no longer look back with bitterness, only with gratitude. Because it's the past that made me strong enough to protect what's right. What do you think about Rose's decision and how she protected Gabriel? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and emotional stories about family life.